Welcome to the Year of the Movie podcast, the podcast where we talk about movies from the Year of the Movie 2023.
That's now.
That is currently, at the time of recording, now.
Yep.
I'm Sebastian.
I'm Maggie.
And today we are back. And I'm just going to say today's episode right from the get-go, Knock at the Cabin. That is the movie we're talking about.
Yep.
Our little house cleaning at the beginning of this episode.
Housekeeping.
What did I say?
House cleaning.
House cleaning.
That's what we did earlier
That's what we did today. Little housekeeping that we're going to do right now. This is our sort of second time recording this specific episode.
Yep.
We were on vacation last week and we tried to record it down there and it did not work.
It was on a lake. It would have been cool if it worked, but it didn't.
It didn't. So here we are back in the room that we were last time, but consistency.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a video viewer, you're seeing the same room. Don't get used to it.
Yeah.
It will change.
We also have Bryce with us again.
Bryce is back, and today he has a microphone, so say hello, Bryce.
I can talk now.
So maybe, if Bryce has opinions or we want to ask Bryce questions, he can participate. He's as always doing our switching. Mm-hmm. He's doing all the technical stuff right now, which is super helpful, but he's sort of our permanent guest. So that's what we are up to right now. And we started this podcast because 2023 is a really weird year for movies.
Yep. Even
Even before the writer's strike and the actor's strike started, it just we had the announcement of Cocaine Bear, 65, our movie, our favorite movie.
one of our most movies.
One of our most movies. Another one that I forgot about, which the trailers are coming out more right now, the marketing, is Strays.
Oh, yeah.
Which is the Will Ferrell talking dog movie.
Yep.
So that's one of them. It was just what is this year?
It was a big pivot from last year.
And now no one can even do promotion for the movies because of the strikes. And so that's where we're at. But today we're talking about Knock at the Cabin, which would have been cool to do at
the woods.
At Lake in the Woods.
Yep.
But that's okay. We're here in the room.
We're gonna pretend this is the first time we've ever had this conversation.
Yep, indeed. So the synopsis of Knock at the Cabin is a family vacationing at a remote cabin is suddenly held hostage by four strangers who ask something unimaginable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were your first impressions of the trailer, or when you first heard about the movie?
My first impressions of the trailer were interesting.
Yeah.
It's an M. Night Shyamalan movie, for those of you who don't know, which can always be hit or drastically miss.
Yeah. So,
you see his name attached. I think it is... Skepticism is okay. I
think it will always be a polarizing movie.
Yeah.
He will make a choice.
Yes, he will.
You will decide if you agree.
So,
are you an M. Night fan?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Basically, Signs, Sixth Sense. Are you an M. Night fan?
Grew up watching Signs a decent amount. I have only seen The Sixth Sense once, and I think it was at a sleepover. I already knew the twist, so it didn't make a huge impact on me. But The Village was one that I really liked growing up. And I think I watched that one at the right age, and it was one of the first ones that I remember seeing of movies can be wild and not just 90 minutes of animated fun or whatever. Bryce, are you an M. Night Shyamalan fan?
He directed your favorite movie of all time, The Last Airbender.
Oh, you know it. Absolute masterpiece.
Yeah.
No, actually, I think for me, Unbreakable.
Oh, yeah.
I think that one was solid for me. It made me care about superhero origins again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And besides the weird, very tense scene between him and
Bruce Willis.
That his weird cameo where they were essentially threatening each other.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think it was a great film.
Yeah, I actually haven't seen those. The Unbreakable, Split, or Glass.
I've seen Unbreakable and Split. And then I was like, I don't know if I agree with this, but I fully support the fact that he's like, no, I'm my own cinematic universe now.
I think that's great. I think a director making their own CU is
very fun.
The M. Night CU.
Yeah.
All right. So what we like to do is talk about the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously movies have lots of trailers, so typically we go with like the first official trailer that came out. And why we talk about the trailer? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Sometimes the trailer is a little misleading.
Yeah.
Like what we thought with our last episode.
Somebody I used to
know.
Yeah.
Another reason is we want, people who haven't seen the movie and don't want spoiled yet, or maybe you haven't heard about the movie and you don't want spoiled yet, so maybe our description, our basically shot-for-shot breakdown of the trailer will get you interested. And
we legally can't show you the trailer, so we're just going to talk about it at you.
And after that, then we'll get into spoiler territory of things that happen in the movie, our thoughts on what happened. But for now, we'll talk about the trailer. So it opens to shots of a cabin in the woods with the song Boogie Shoes playing. And there's other shots of the surrounding woods, and it's really highlighting that it's a remote location. And we see a family comprised of Andrew, Eric, who are husband, and their daughter, Wynn, in the car driving to the cabin, and they're singing along to Boogie Shoes. We see them briefly exploring their vacation spot and jumping into a lake, and they're just one big happy family. And the song is still playing. We see Wynn outside by herself collecting grasshoppers. It's just what kids do on vacation. The camera tilts up and the song just cuts out when a large man,
big boy,
is shown walking out of the woods in the distance, heading towards Wynn. The music gets much more suspenseful, and then suddenly there's a knock at the cabin door.
I did not expect that.
And the credits on screen say, "From M. Night Shyamalan," appear on screen. We see Eric and Andrew turn towards the door, and another clip from outside as the large man,
big boy,
introduces himself as Leonard to Wynn and shakes her hand. He says that it's nice to meet her, and there's suspenseful close-ups of grasshoppers. Wynn asks Leonard, is looking at the camera when she asks Leonard, "Why are you here?" And Leonard responds, "I suppose I'm here to make friends with you and your dads too." And there's more knocking with a shot of trees. We hear Leonard say, "But my heart is broken." And another close-up of Wynn's face as she asks, "Why is it broken?" which feels like a reasonable question.
Yeah.
Leonard responds, "Because of what I have to do today." Not ominous. As more figures walk out of the woods, also shown at a distance. We cut to more forceful knocking at the door with Wynn and her dads inside, and they're looking concerned. And they look out the windows and they see the strangers are carrying strange weapons. Andrew whispers what he sees to Eric, cut with shots of Wynn looking scared, and the dads are at least very nervous. And there's another clip of Wynn walking away from Leonard outside as his so-called friends approach him out of focus behind her. He narrates that the four of them have a very important job to do and says, in fact, it might be the most important job in the history of the world. Spooky music crescendos with a close-up of the doorknob rattling. More frantic shots of the family trying to keep the strangers outside, blocking doors, getting the fire poker to protect themselves, and scooping up their daughter. We see quick shots of the group of intruders breaking into the house from all sides, and Eric rushes a woman with her weapon in her hand and the fire poker in his hand. And the last of the family's defenses fall, and the rest of the intruders make their way inside. The screen goes black and cuts back in with our first clear look of the intruders, who is led by Dave Bautista, the large man.
The big boy.
They stand in a line looking fairly nervous as Leonard says, "We were called and are united by a common vision, which has now become a command that we cannot ignore." We see both dads are tied to some chairs and Wynn is standing behind them. Leonard continues, "The four of us are here to prevent the apocalypse." Andrew looks shocked, and Leonard says, "Your family has been chosen to make a horrible decision." Close-up of each family member's face, Leonard finishes, "If you fail to choose, the world will end." The trailer finishes with the title of the movie against a dark background with more knocking and the tagline, "Make the choice," with a brief shot of a figure with a white hood over their head. So that is the trailer. Description, if that sounds interesting to you and you haven't seen it and you want to watch it,
it's a pretty good trailer.
You should hit pause on this video or this podcast audio, go watch it, and then play the rest of it of this podcast / video.
Yep. Yeah. It's a pretty good trailer. It's definitely better than Somebody I Used to Know. I feel like everything that happens in the movie, which we can kind of talk about now, is pretty much what you see is what you get from the trailer. There's no huge surprises, which is also kind of one of the bummers of the movie.
Yeah.
Is that it's an M. Night Shyamalan movie, so you kind of expect like
There's
gonna be a twist. Someone is gonna see dead people, or there won't be any coincidences.
Yeah.
Something is gonna happen. But in this movie, no.
Yeah.
The twist is they were telling the truth.
They were indeed telling the truth. So obviously, if you don't want spoilers, just to reiterate,
Oops, too late.
now is when you should probably stop. But if you don't care, which you shouldn't, because it's not like this is a movie that's like groundbreaking,
Not really.
then keep watching.
Yeah.
Also, I want to say that, since we have recorded this before,
Mm-hmm.
this episode is probably going to be another slightly longer one,
Yeah.
about an hour.
Probably.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
just keep that in mind.
Yeah. So the twist of the movie doesn't exist. That's the twist.
The apocalypse is real.
The apocalypse is real. So like the beginning kind of tries to set up, I would say like the first 20 minutes of it tries to set up of like, are they telling the truth?
Mhm.
Is the apocalypse happening? Are they just sharing a delusion, and then this family is the victims of that?
Yeah.
We don't know, but we do know because the home invaders say that they have been experiencing these visions. They are compelled to do these things, and they're very apologetic about it.
Yeah.
But they also say that they have these visions for a while, and they've been drawing them. And then the opening credits of the movie, you see these drawings of these visions of like the apocalypse basically on different notes and like spare pieces of paper. And one of them says like nurse's notes, and one of them is like a random, like a test or something that's being graded.
Yeah.
And then you find out that the different home invaders, they reveal a lot of personal information to try and relate to their victims. And one of them is like, I'm a nurse. Dave Bautista's character is a teacher. So like if you're paying attention at the beginning, you already know that at least the visions are real,
Mhm.
because it's set up before the movie even starts.
Yeah.
With the credits.
And just to really be specific with what this group was tasked to do,
Oh yeah.
because the trailer like doesn't actually like
They don't come out and say
fully
it.
say it.
Yeah.
They just like,
It's heavily implied.
is that the family, Andrew, Eric, and Wynn, have
Mm-hmm.
to decide which one of them has to die, and then they have to kill that family member themselves,
Yeah.
or else the apocalypse will happen.
They're the 4 home invaders. They will ask the family 4 times to make this choice. And every time that they say no, they won't make the choice. One of the home invaders is killed by the other invaders, and then they release a plague upon the world.
Which can be an actual plague.
Yeah.
It can be a giant tsunami.
One of them was a big earthquake
Yeah.
/ tsunami combo. One of
And
them was a sickness.
Airplanes just
Airplanes-
started falling out of the sky, which
Yeah.
is not how that would work, but that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's not like an airplane just stops moving.
Yeah.
Like, obviously it would suck, but they can still glide a little bit. Like, they wouldn't just...
They just stop.
It's raining airplanes.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a little bit of like a anticlimax, I would say.
That's the twist.
Yeah. And then I guess we can talk about the ending now of the movie is that Eric says, "It's okay, you can kill me." And then they prevent the apocalypse from happening. So Andrew and Wen live. All of the home invaders
we will talk
die.
about that more in depth in a bit, for
Yeah.
sure. But
Yeah.
So if you are listening,
Mm-hmm.
as you know, Andrew and Eric are a gay couple,
They're married to each other.
and there is some like
So it starts out of like the realities of homophobia are heavily sprinkled throughout this movie, and sometimes it handles it well, and sometimes it's weird about it. So part of that initial 20-minute setup of like, is this real or not, is Eric and Andrew think they're being targeted because they're a gay couple and that they're being hate crimed. Andrew has been attacked previously in a bar.
Hospitalized, attacked.
He was hit over the head with a beer bottle, and then they show through different flashback scenes that he was hit over the head with a beer bottle at a bar where he and Eric were having a date. He basically he starts working out a lot. He gets really intense.
He gets a gun.
He becomes much more protective of his family, which is very understandable. They think, or Andrew specifically is the one that mentions, like, this is because we're gay, right? You're attacking it. You're invading our
and then one of the home invaders are like, no, none of us have a hateful bone in our body.
And then you find out immediately that that's not true.
One of them,
played by Rupert Grint, is he was the guy that attacked Andrew in the bar.
He was the hate crimer.
Yeah, he gave the rest of them a fake name. Which doesn't make sense that he would do that, but that's whatever.
It doesn't. And then there's evidence of why they should have known his real name later at the end of the movie, so it just makes no sense.
So it almost goes into a there are no coincidences territory of, like, they had a previous connection, and then we both thought while we were watching it that during that flashback scene of, like, you kind of see Rupert Grint, it's kind of is it the same guy? Is it not? Is Andrew misremembering things? Whatever. You find out that it's the same guy, and then it shows them in the hospital with him getting the glass taken out of his head. One of them, the home invaders, mentions that she's a nurse, so I was watching that, like, looking for her.
She would show up there too, and somehow Dave Bautista and the other one would.
I thought Dave Bautista was going to be their daughter's teacher or, like, work at their school or something, and then the fourth woman is a chef, so it was like maybe they went to a diner after the hospital. But she
also has a kid, so maybe her kid goes to the same school, right? Like there was a way of, like,
you could have tied them all together,
but just the one for some reason,
just him. So it's like it almost does something with the homophobia. The other thing that I don't super love is that the ending of it with Eric basically, Eric and Andrew, they don't butt heads. They're very united the entire time of, like, we are literally in mortal danger. We should stick together with this.
But Andrew is more...
Andrew does not believe in any of the stuff that's going on of, like, he does not believe that any of them have been called by a higher power or anything like that.
But Eric is more open to it.
Eric sees God.
Eric gets a concussion basically right away. Yeah. In, I think, kind of the silliest way possible. He basically slips and falls.
During that initial confrontation that they show in the trailer of, like, the woman breaks in and then he tries to defend his family first of like with the fire poker. She overpowers him. He hits his head on the floor.
Gets a concussion.
So then when Rupert Grint is being sacrificed to release the first plague, then he sees a figure made out of light that, like, may or may not have been a reflection in the mirror. So it's also him trying to figure that out the entire time.
But the twist is it was God.
It was God, ? It could be upper or lowercase g.
Yeah, it was a figure.
Yeah.
But it's also in the flashbacks that we get, we see that Eric is more of a believer than Andrew was, because they're at an adoption place and there's a mural of Jesus playing soccer with children. And Andrew tells Eric, he's like, it's okay if you want to pray.
It's almost played off as a joke, but Eric is definitely portrayed as the more spiritual one of the two of them. It's not necessarily Christian, but he is more, I would say, open-minded.
Yes.
So, all being said, back to the homophobia. So the ending, it feels a little icky to me of humanity, whatever, higher power, anything, whatever it is, has decided that this is the way that humanity needs to prove that it deserves to live, is that these two people need to make this decision. And that Eric is okay with that because he has rationalized that we were chosen. They never mentioned why this family was chosen. They were like, we don't know either. But Eric rationalizes it as our love is so pure that that's why we were chosen. We were chosen to protect everyone else. And isn't that great that we are able to make this sacrifice on behalf of everyone, and so our daughter can have a better life?
And Andrew was like,
I was just hate crimed.
I was just fuck that. What the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like,
And it doesn't, it feels like a weird time to make that call in your movie as a moral sounding board of like, this family has been through it. You see it, like you see him physically be attacked. You see Andrew's family not accept Eric, and they have a really awkward dinner. You see them at the orphanage adopting when Eric is her legal father on the paperwork, and he says, oh, my wife couldn't be here today, this is her brother.
Yeah,
that's how they get around like being a gay couple and trying to adopt a child. And it there's been a lot of weird stuff and bad things happening legally to gay people within the last several years, and it just feels like a really well-intentioned but misplaced allyship call.
Yeah, I think the twist in this one is M. Night is an ally.
And it's not fully his fault, because this is based on a book, and the book is also about a gay couple, but
the book is different, and we will get there. We will get there.
The choices of the movie really make it come across as like kind of preachy.
Yeah,
like you were saying when we first watched it, of like, this feels like a Christian parable movie.
There's a weird religious push, in my opinion, to this movie, because it is like, maybe God is real.
It is
like,
incredibly non-denominational, but it's
they're the four home invaders are the four horsemen of the apocalypse.
Yeah,
like, it is
so we can transition into my next bullet point, which is the lore isn't made super clear, and I don't necessarily need it to be spelled out, but things are briefly mentioned and then not followed up on. So like, we have no idea what M. Night Shyamalan's version of God is, which I can and cannot be okay with at the same time. The part of the setup of like, are these people legit when they come to this house? They say that like, they mention multiple times like, we all thought we were crazy until we met up on that pier together, and that was like the first time that they met in person. Was they were all compelled to make these weapons and then meet up wearing these specific color shirts at this one specific location, and then later on they say they let it slip that they met on a message board, and then that's never brought up again.
I think the main problem with the movie is that there are tons of setups that are really interesting.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really interesting setups that get no payoff.
Yeah. This
This movie edges you all the way through and it doesn't finish the job. That's what this movie is.
So if that's what you're into, then M. Night's got you covered.
Because like, it's like they talk about the message boards.
Yeah.
We don't really find out
Yeah.
anything about that. It starts out, and in the trailer, with grasshoppers. She's taking notes with all of her grasshoppers. She's really into grasshoppers.
Yeah.
We get a final shot of the grasshoppers that she left in the jar outside.
Yeah.
We get a shot of, a few minutes after that, of grasshoppers on a window, and then never again.
Right, like when they even said like, we are releasing plague, so I was like, plague of grasshoppers, got it.
Yeah, there's something gonna be like locusts,
or
right?
There's gonna be a shot of the grasshopper, like she talks to the grasshoppers and she's like, don't worry, I'm just studying you for a little bit and then I'll let you go.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, we're gonna get a shot of those grasshoppers dead in that jar later.
Yeah.
Never.
Or,
even that.
if she makes it out, then she has her grasshoppers at the end to at least be like, at least I still have you guys. No.
Nothing.
We do not see them again.
Why are there grasshoppers?
Yeah.
Anyway. That's one of the more minor things that we have wrong with it, but when you talk about a movie 3 times, you're gonna focus on the grasshoppers. Another thing is when Eric is having his like literal / metaphorical come to Jesus moment, then he says like, I've figured it all out. These guys are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
And then lists them out.
And lists them. So like the one is a nurse, like we've mentioned. He says that they all represent different aspects of humanity. So the one is a nurse, so she's nurturing, and the other one is a chef, so it's sustenance, or I forget what big word he uses. And then teaching for Dave Bautista. and then just all the bad stuff is represented by Ron Weasley. And like you're supposed to acknowledge all of these aspects of humanity, the good and the bad, and then the Four Horsemen do that. I don't think that's what the Four Horsemen stand for.
They bring the war,
There's war and death, famine.
They're all pretty bad typically.
Yeah,
in most aspects of literature and film and everything, they are typically pretty bad.
None of them are a nurse.
No.
Yeah. So like, fine. It can be his own interpretation of well-established lore. That's cool. But like, there's no. I was expecting that M. Night Shyamalan moment where someone is monologuing and you get all of the edited bits of like, here are all the details that you could have paid attention to the entire time, and it's all coming together. Like, and instead you almost get that editing sequence in this part, and that's it. And it's also never touched on again.
If it matters, the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse are death, famine, war, and conquest.
Sweet.
If they represent anything.
Yeah, so basically, there's one horseman, Rupert Grant, who represents all four of the horsemen.
The Four Horsemen.
And then his three buds.
Yeah. Three of the Four Horsemen called out sick that day, actually.
So they got substitute horsemen.
This is the second string of horsemen. Another weird lore thing is there is a line where I might be misremembering it, but when they're having the initial confrontation of like, it's because we're gay, isn't it? That's why you're doing this. And then the one is like, we don't have a homophobic bone in our bodies.
Yeah.
Then I'm pretty sure she says, we didn't know it'd be a same-sex couple this time. I like, it's either she doesn't say this time or it's some other line that they say, but I remember having the feeling of like, this has happened before. They have acknowledged that this is a cycle that repeats itself, and this initial decision is now being made by a same-sex couple. But no one ever talks about all the other times. Like,
so if you watch the movie and that's not the case, if the line isn't this time and we are just,
let me know.
Yeah, let us, because
there's no. It really makes it seem like this is a cyclical thing, and it's not. Yeah,
and another thing, back to the edging.
It all comes back to that.
in that there was something set up that we don't ever get an explanation or payoff, really, is the weapons that the home invaders use.
Yes.
They were told that they had to make them the specific way.
Yeah.
They don't know why they made them this way. We were never told.
Yeah.
And they're just there.
Yeah. The nurse character, she's tending to Eric's head trauma, and she's kind of explaining like, hey man, I thought I was crazy too. And like, as she's helping him out, and she's like, I started seeing these visions. I started drawing them. And then I made my weapon. I went to the pier, and then it turns out I wasn't alone. But she never says like why, how she made the weapon. They all seem like they're made out of the same materials.
Yeah.
Was there a flashback at some point of all of them going to an Ace Hardware or something, like
finding a welder, like, hey, can you make this? And the welder's like, I guess.
Why?
I mean, I can put a hammer on a chain, but
when they all die, or when each of the four horsemen, I guess, are sacrificed, that's like the consequence of them not making a decision to save humanity, is then a plague is released. That's what they say. I would love to know what the consequences are for the four horsemen to just not die. Like, they keep checking their watches,
and they're like, we have to die at this time.
Yeah, they're on a very set schedule, which is also not acknowledged why. But like, what if they didn't die?
They were just like, I'm good.
Yeah, what if this decision wasn't placed on Eric and Andrew?
Yeah. Would the apocalypse then just happen automatically?
Yeah.
Like, that's never established. It really isn't. Like, maybe it's implied.
Yeah.
In just the sense of like, they wouldn't be doing this unless they know it would just happen.
Right. And like, I get that they are also like, they acknowledge that it's a terrible decision for Eric and Andrew to go through, and they are also like they're literally willing to kill themselves and each other for the sake of the greater good.
Yeah.
So like they also have skin in the game, but it's just kind of pushing the decision off onto someone else. And there's no explanation why.
Yeah, so before we get into like the technical stuff, I want to talk about Leonard.
Okay.
I want to talk about Leonard because it's Dave Bautista.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about like acting and all that stuff later. Just the character. Just the character is a man looks like Dave Bautista. Big, giant man.
Tattooed.
Tattoos everywhere.
Yeah.
Is like a second grade.
He's a second grade teacher in Chicago.
Yeah. All right. He is a teacher. Maybe he has some Chicago background. Maybe he was in the military. Something. There is a scene in this movie where Eric and Andrew almost escape. They get a gun.
Yeah.
They get Andrew's gun out of the car.
His real gun.
And then Dave Bautista goes and runs into the bathroom.
They lock him in the bathroom.
And then they hear a window break.
Yeah.
And so like, shit, we got to at least look inside the bathroom to make sure he's not in there.
Yeah.
So they open the door and the window is broken. And the window is obviously way too small for Dave Bautista.
Yeah.
So they're like, well, shoot.
Yeah.
He's in the bathtub with the curtain closed. Okay? So they make the smart call here. They shoot into the bathtub
instead of just pulling.
Just pulling, right?
Yeah.
So they shoot in, nothing. There's no sound, and they're like, "Oh, okay."
Maybe he did go through the window.
Maybe he went through the window, and then they take a step forward, and then Dave Bautista tackles through the curtain.
Yeah.
Gets the upper hand again, and it is revealed that he did in fact get shot in the arm, and then just handled it like a champ. He made no sound. You didn't hear it go into the body. He
didn't like hear behind the curtain just a
right? He just completely silent. He was just
I mean, by that point,
I got shot.
He's got the Lord or whoever on his side. I guess he's fine.
And then it gets to a point where Dave Bautista is the only one left. And he has to kill himself.
He has to kill himself, and then he says, "You will have a few minutes to make your decision after I'm gone, or else it'll be too late."
So he kills himself.
Yeah.
Not with the gun that he now has control of.
Yeah.
He takes a knife out and slits his own throat.
Yeah.
Which, slitting someone else's throat, not incredibly easy.
Yeah.
Right? Like, obviously, if it's a sharp knife, you can get a cut. But doing it to yourself, our brains have this whole thing that says don't injure yourselves, which is why when you bite your finger, you can't just bite right through it, right? Like, so he takes a knife and slits his own throat.
Yeah.
And I just really have a problem with, we don't know who Dave Bautista's character, we don't know who Leonard is other than he loves the kids that he teaches. He coaches them, he teaches them.
He coaches them and he says, we're really bad this year.
But I love them.
Yeah.
Like, he's just this genuinely nice guy.
Yeah.
But also somehow is the toughest badass you've ever seen.
Yeah. And they kind of make a big deal in a couple, or in a subtle way of like, this is a big man.
Yeah.
Like, they acknowledge that a lot. The introduction scene of him and Wen, which is like kind of the strongest scene in the movie, is at the very beginning. There's that shot that's in the trailer of him shaking her hand, and it is just so wild because this is a real man and this is his real size of like the shot is from the side of him reaching down to shake her hand, and then she's reaching up, and it's literally like she could hold one of his fingers and they shake hands.
So Leonard is a good character.
Yeah.
But I want to know more.
I want to know more about all of them.
Yeah.
Like, we at one point, maybe it was on camera or off, talked about like the use of flashbacks in this movie comes across as a little bit cheap, partly because of like the heavy-handed way they use the homophobia sometimes, but then also like I get it if you're supposed to be in the shoes of the family and wondering like, is this all real that's happening? But because the movie doesn't do that, it like take a strong enough stance on that, then I want to see flashbacks of the rest of the characters of like oh my God, am I losing my mind? Like, I'm seeing these visions or whatever. I want to see Dave Bautista like in his classroom, like just trying to handle this while dealing with a bunch of second graders.
Yeah.
And that's not really touched on.
Nope.
Yeah.
So some good things.
Yeah. Cinematography is great.
Yeah.
This movie looks great.
It's so far from stuff that we've talked about, probably one of like the better, like more thought out
definitely
movies in terms of the cinematography.
Yeah. So Shyamalan said in a tweet, I don't know when, but that it said that he used lens from the 90s to give the movie an old school thriller look. This movie does not have an old school thriller feel, but it still looks great.
Yeah.
And then there were two directors of photography. One of them is Yaron Blaschke, who worked on Servant, which is M. Night Shyamalan's TV show that is on Apple. So he did Servant, The Lighthouse, The Northman, The Witch. He's got a very strong background.
It's a fantastic background.
Yeah, strong horror vibes.
Yeah.
And then the other one was Lowell A. Meyer, who also worked on Servant. And then his other big credits are Yogi Berra, It Ain't Over, and Carly Rae Jepsen, It's Not Christmas Till Somebody Cries.
Which some may say is even stronger.
Is even scarier. So they had two DPs, basically just for scheduling reasons, but it was also then split pretty much down the middle of Yaron did all of the interiors and Lowell did all of the exteriors. And that was something that it's not like you can watch it and tell that there were two DPs, but it was definitely very stylistically different between it all basically takes place inside the cabin, but it was
all the outside scenes have all of like the really wide shots or the really close-up shots, and then like the inside still beautifully shot is a little more typical.
Some of the interior scenes are a little more artistic, especially of like Dave Bautista swings his axe down onto Rupert Grint, and the camera just follows it the entire time, and it's a good shot.
But like sorry, you go. No, sorry. We'll get there.
Okay. The only other thing I have for this is that they did not put up any lights inside the cabin. They only used natural lighting. So just watching it, knowing that is even more impressive.
It is, because the lighting was good.
Yeah.
And it's also fun to see when a big studio movie like this doesn't use lights, because we don't use lights.
Except for that one.
Except for the one above us right now. But that's...
I imagine the exception to this was making the figure out of light. But still pretty cool. Yeah.
So this movie uses tons of close-ups. Like, that is a huge thing that this movie does. But I also want to talk about its use of wide shots, which they do at the beginning a lot and when they're outside a lot, in a way that just works so well, because it is like, even throughout all the nonsense of this movie, it is still intense, and there's a lot of just like, it's kind of stressful. And when they give you this giant wide shot in a moment of feeling contained, I don't know, it's like you're trying to escape, but you can't.
It's really highlighting how isolated they are.
Yeah, and when they introduce Leonard, it is a giant wide shot of the woods.
Yeah.
And then very small, they make Dave Bautista very small in the bottom of the frame.
Which is impressive.
Yeah. Just start to walk out of the woods.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh shit, something's about to happen.
That's what I like the most about the trailer, is how long it takes until you see any of their faces. But it's not until... in the trailer, it isn't until Dave Bautista is standing inside of the house that you see his face, and then it shows all four of them lined up, talking, like explaining while they're there. I kind of wish that the movie did that, but I also just really like the intro scene.
The scene between Dave Bautista, Leonard and Wen, was so good.
I think it's about 9 minutes or something like that. But it is just the full setup of the whole movie. It's a really extended conversation between the two of them, of he is like kind of trying to gain her trust. You can tell that he's experienced with kids, or his character is with that scene. It's very cool. And then he kind of also sprinkles in a couple other things of like, he doesn't know these people. He says that he wants to be friends with Wen. And she's like, are these your friends? When she sees the rest of them walking out, and he's like, not really. They're
my
kind of my
coworkers.
coworkers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, close-ups. Yeah.
They use them really well.
Yeah.
Like the thing that you get in film school with student films is almost everything is a close-up.
Yeah.
Because they think it looks better. It's easier to make a shot with a close-up because you get the out of focus look. But this one utilizes them in a way that isn't overdone, but is still like you notice like, oh, okay, like this is.
It really highlights the intensity of everything. Yeah. The other thing that this movie does a lot is the cutaway from violence, and this is, I think, the first time that we somewhat disagree.
Yeah.
on something in a movie. So I kind of wish that the movie focused on the violence more or showed it more. Every time that someone dies, you don't see it on camera. It's shown either just off screen or like you'll hear the gunshot and then you see the birds flying away from the trees, like that kind of classic thing.
Yeah.
You never see, even after someone is dead, you never see the body. And like they kind of do that. The characters kind of do that to protect the family, and especially when they're like, let's clean this up, let's get this out of here.
Yeah.
Like, let's not freak her out any more than we need to. But if the point of the decision is to kind of confront them with the consequences of their actions, then I kind of wish that the violence was more in your face at least once or twice for the deaths to really show like these are the true stakes that you are dealing with.
Yeah.
You disagree?
I liked that they cut away.
Yeah.
Obviously, you and I have talked about it.
What?
I do think there is an exception for one of the deaths.
Yeah.
But I liked that they cut away from that, especially because I think shows like The Boys and Quentin Tarantino movies have made it commonplace to have over-violence. And this is a movie that could have easily done that because they made these giant ridiculous weapons that could have just like chopped a head off or squished a head together.
It could have been a thrasher or a thriller. Yeah.
And I like that it didn't. It to me, because like the shot of when Rupert Grant dies follows the axe down, and then you see his torso with his head just above frame, and you hear it land, and then the blood starts to trickle down.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really great because it's also like, I think Wynn is supposed to be maybe not the protagonist, but like
she's very protected. Everyone is
everyone
is on Wen's side
because it starts with Wynn.
Yeah,
you're kind of following Wynn, and they are trying to protect Wynn. And for Wynn, this is just a frighteningly scary event.
She is 8 years old. I don't know if we mentioned.
Yeah, she's 8 years old, and people have broken in and tied her dad's up, and is like, one of you has to die. So that's what's happening. Yeah. Right? But they're still trying to protect her. And so I think it's more terrifying when they're shielding her, but she still knows what's happening. Yeah. And I think that puts the viewer in like that same headspace of like, it's very uneasy, of like, I know deaths are happening, but I can't really see it. Yeah. Like, I think that's kind of icky.
That's fair.
The one death that I do think they should have shown is Eric's.
Yes.
I think Eric's death should have been shown. They completely cut away from that.
It's
the
away
one
to an
death
exterior.
that they said mattered.
Yes.
Right.
Like the other ones matter, but they could have been preventable. But Eric's or someone in the family, it needed to happen.
Otherwise, the world ended.
Right. And then you see they're watching the news at different points to like see the updates of the plagues happening. So like it's broadcast news, so they're not going to show someone like dying on screen, but you just saw the planes dropping out of the sky. You just heard them talking about the thousands of people who just died. One of the plagues is a sickness that is specifically targeting children, and you see like a hospital ward and everything. And then to not even show like this one guy is interesting.
Especially because he's like, I can't believe like we were given this opportunity. Yeah. Right? Like it's because our love is so pure.
He just said he was cool with this, and then
I have to go. Yeah. Like I'm ready. And then you don't see it. Like it's another edge.
Yeah.
Like it's another thing for this movie to be like,
Yeah.
no, not yet. No. Like it's just that.
Yeah. So I found a couple quotes talking about this. So Shyamalan, in an interview, I don't know who with, says, if you think about the language of cinema and wide shots, mid shots, and then close-ups, they are different ways that the characters are interacting with their environment. So let's say I'm in a hostage situation like that and I'm thinking about escape. I might be talking to you, but I'm thinking about how to get out. And I can do this in a wide shot because that's conveying that the character is saying, hey, it's going to be all right. No, I'm fine. But I'm thinking about the windows and the doors and you see me struggling. If there's a specific thing that I'm feeling, I tend to do it closer. I'm trying to ascertain whether you are crazy or if you're going to hurt me right now. I'm in hyper close-up with you. I'm watching your facial expressions. I don't really care about your legs. And so the movie starts with a gunshot. It starts immediately with a stranger showing up, and there's a lot of close-ups because they're at a 9 from almost go. You're with your daughter and strangers break into your house. You're at a 9 and you need to get out of here. That's definitely how the movie starts. Is when with her grasshoppers outside, and then a strange man approaches her from the woods, and that's like the first thing that she says to him is like, I'm not supposed to talk to strangers. Another review that I found from rogerebert.com gave the movie 2 out of 4 stars. And it says, not that the movie needs gore, but the threat of violence in this immediate scenario is specifically numbed by cutaways. For a story pitched in the human capacity to recognize another's life value, there just isn't the terror that could create some of its emotional stakes. The lack of it is deeply felt once it becomes apparent what monsters this movie is and isn't dealing with, while showing how these people are driven by something that forces them to do awful things. Instead, Knock at the Cabin creates one anticlimax after another.
Yeah.
Another thing I just thought of, for all of the violence that isn't shown on screen, the one thing that is shown without any cutaways is Andrew being attacked. Because it's the conversation, it's the camera flips back and forth between, so it's basically the actors talking to the camera, and then it's Andrew talking, and you see some of the bar behind him, and then you see Redmond turn back around and smash the bottle like while Eric is talking.
Twice. 2 bottles.
There's no cutaway for that at all. I don't have a takeaway for that. That's just a thing that just popped into my head. Anyway, the cast is good.
Yeah, I mean, everyone in this movie acted really well.
Yeah.
I think this might be one of Dave Bautista's best works.
Dave Bautista is Leonard. M. Night Shyamalan specifically wanted him for this movie based off of his performance from Blade Runner 2049.
Which was a fantastic performance. It's such a small part, but he still just knocked that out.
When Dave Bautista first saw the script, apparently he was traveling a lot that day, was super tired, and then read the script, and his first thought was, that's a lot of dialogue. And he's correct. Even in the trailer, it's a lot of dialogue.
Well, even for him, because like let's think about his big roles, like Blade Runner. He barely talks in that. Drax, he doesn't say.
He has one-liners.
Yeah, he has one-liners.
Yeah.
He's in one of the James Bond movies.
Right.
And never says anything.
Yeah.
It's purely face and physical.
And then Glass Onion.
Which was. Meh. But we'll talk about that eventually, I guess. Right? No, that was 22.
No, that was last year.
Okay, great. Yeah. I don't want to talk about it.
No, we didn't like it.
Nope.
Anyway, Jonathan Groff is Eric. Ben Aldridge is Andrew. I know Jonathan Groff from Glee.
I know Ben Aldridge from Pennyworth.
Yeah. Obviously, they've both been in other things, but that's what we know.
Yeah.
Nikki Amuka Bird is Sabrina. That is the nurse. Rupert Grint is Redmond. Barely in this movie because he dies first. Yeah. Abby Quinn is Adrian, who is the fourth horseman. She is the chef, and she also reveals that she is a son.
Yep.
And then Kristen Cui, C-U-I, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it, but she is Wen. The actress is also 8 years old, and this is her first movie.
Yeah.
She was in a music video, and then she did this. So there's a good interview with her and other cast members on her IMDb page, and just talking about the whole experience. And it's interesting hearing M. Night Shyamalan talk about how to work with child actors. But it really seems like everyone just really liked Kristen on set, and they became friends.
Yeah.
And she was doing her interview, and she's like, Jonathan and Ben and I are gonna go see Wicked after this. It's
which
very
is
good.
very good.
Yeah.
And M. Night obviously worked with children in the past.
Yes.
Many,
Mm-hmm.
but the one that really matters to me, Haley Joel Osment.
Yes.
So this marks 2 episodes in a row where we can talk about Haley Joel Osment.
Mm-hmm.
Production facts.
Yep. So this movie was released February 3rd, 2023, theatrically by Universal Pictures. It was originally scheduled for a February 17th release, but was moved to avoid competition with Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. So instead, their competition was 80 for Brady.
Can't wait to talk about that movie.
Yep. So this is also the second film in a 2-part partnership deal with Universal Pictures that they had with Shyamalan's Blinding Edge Pictures. The first movie was 2021's Old, which people on my part of the internet did not like.
And I didn't watch it because I don't super care about M. Night
Yeah.
movies.
But it was still technically commercially successful.
Yeah.
It has a runtime of 100 minutes on different ratings, 67% on Rotten Tomatoes with a 63% audience score, 63 out of 100 Metacritic, and a C rating by CinemaScore. So like, I feel like that's the overall vibe of like, yeah, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of.
Yep.
Yeah.
Was it a successful movie?
Yes. It had a budget of $20 million, and the box office, it got $54.8 million worldwide, with 35.4 of that being domestic. It was projected to gross 15 to 17 million from just over 3,600 theaters in its opening weekend. It made 5.4 million on the first day and debuted at a total of 14.2 million, displacing Avatar: The Way of Water from the top of the box office. So right in that
that's
range expected.
It's not bad.
Yeah, that's all from wikipedia.com.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, so it did pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it didn't deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it, that feels like an adequate amount of money for the quality of that movie.
I think saying that it displaced Avatar: The Way of Water from the top of the box office makes it seem like a much bigger deal than it actually was when it came out.
That movie was in theaters for months.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yes. So this movie is based off of the 2018 novel The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. They changed the title. Paul Tremblay thought that they changed the title because M. Night Shyamalan wanted to keep the ending a surprise. So if you have a book out there that's about your movie, then it's not going to be a surprise. But also the title is too similar to The Cabin in the Woods, which is a movie with a very different vibe. So the film was optioned in late 2017 before the book was published, and then Tremblay had to keep it a secret that the movie was based off of his book until late 2022.
That's wild.
Yeah. Good for him.
Yeah.
Shyamalan originally came onto the project as a producer. The original pitch for the project was just a straight adaptation, changing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Shyamalan was not on board with that for a reason we will just get to. So then eventually he became the director and then has a co-writing credit. Paul Tremblay does not have a co-writing credit on this. Shyamalan says that this was the fastest he has ever written a script.
It shows.
It shows.
Yeah.
Tremblay is not credited as a co-writer. It made fans of his book very upset on Twitter. And in some interviews that I found, Tremblay seemed disappointed his name wasn't on the poster / he wasn't more involved in the promotion.
The poster should at least say story by Tremblay, right? Like I don't know if I wrote the book, they took this movie, changed it the way they changed it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I would want my credit to be written by.
So,
but story.
I believe on IMDb he has a story by credit.
Okay.
I think he was also in interviews. He has been like very upfront about what the adaptation process is like, the pros and cons of that, and he's very aware that he had a pretty good experience, even though it was drastically changed. And also, it seems like part of that good experience was M. Night Shyamalan was very upfront about why he wanted to change stuff from the book.
Gotcha. So yeah,
the big difference between the book and the movie, the book ending, Wen is accidentally killed as the gun goes off in a struggle, and it's much more up in the air if the apocalypse was even happening in the first place the entire time. It's I think a lot of these setups that we were talking about earlier is like, that's all stuff. I think, I haven't read the book, but I'm pretty sure that's all stuff that came from the book. Is like, in that he's much more 50-50 on whether or not it's happening, so he's trying to provide evidence for both sides. And then Wen's death is also supposed to be like a, one, does this count to fulfill our dark needs? And then also, if it doesn't, then my God, what have we put ourselves through and this family through? So it's much more in the gray area. So a couple things that I found in an interview that Tremblay did with the Daily Beast. He talks about, for Knight, that was the draw for him, the question of what would you do in that situation. When I met with him on set, he was like, I jokingly told my family, all right, who are we going to sacrifice? Like, geez, Dad. I guess for me, with the book, the choice was there. I felt that it was a little bit more, I don't want to say complex, but I felt like the story was more than just that choice. The book became, I don't care whether or not the apocalypse was happening. It was all going to be about the choice Andrew and Eric were going to make. It was a metaphor for what we were living through, as opposed to, are we going to save the world or not? It's the idea of rejecting fear and cruelty and hate for a little bit of hope. So M. Night Shyamalan did not want to kill a child in his movie.
No, I mean, I can't imagine the production house. I can't imagine Paramount or Universal, would have been like, yeah, that's fine, kill an 8-year-old.
Yeah, I get that was a line for him, but it seems like because that payoff wasn't there anymore, then he switched his focus to like, we'll put myself in Eric and Andrew's shoes, and what would I do? And that's a less nuanced take than what Paul was going for. And then in that same article, he says, I think people see my ending as darker because Wen died. That doesn't happen at the end of the film. It's undoubtedly super dark, but I think a lot of people are interpreting, oh, these two men said no, now the world's going to be over. I never said that's the ending. It's up to your interpretation, but I purposely divorced myself from thinking about whether or not the apocalypse was happening when I wrote it. I wanted the evidence to be equal on both sides. My ending is defiantly hopeful, whereas in Knight's movie, when I first saw it, I felt so horrified and scared. I felt so sad for Andrew and Wen. Not only did they just decide to kill Eric, but how are they going to live with the knowledge that this incredibly cruel supreme being of the universe put them through that? I don't find that hopeful at all.
Yeah, which I completely agree with.
Yes.
And a big problem that I had that I saved because I knew we were going to talk about this quote is when Andrew and Eric are having their heart-to-heart at the end, and Eric is like, it's okay, I'm ready to go. Like, this is what we're going to do. He talks about a future he sees, and we get a flash forward where it's Andrew and Wen, like 20 years from now. And they're happy, they're hanging out, and Eric is like, Wen has someone who loves her as much as we love her. You guys are happy together. You're like, you talk all the time. You're still super close. No! No! In no world would Wen and Andrew be able to be close, because anytime, I don't care how much therapy you get, anytime Wen sees Andrew, she's going to be reminded of the fact that Andrew killed her other dad. She
is very aware of that.
Like they do a great job of like making this a child who actually is functional, isn't just a dumbass. Like, she understands what's happening. She's not there when Eric dies. She goes and hides in a treehouse nearby. And then Andrew goes and gets her. And when he goes up the treehouse, she says, "Is Daddy? Did Daddy Eric save us?" Right. So
Daddy Eric save everyone.
So she completely understands that Andrew had to kill Eric. So there's no way that, one, she's not in jail, and two, that she and Andrew have a good relationship after this.
The movie really tries hard to like bring the two of them together. Because it's just them and the aftermath of this. Lightning strikes the cabin and then it lights on fire, and I guess the implication is supposed to be like, now there's no evidence of any of this happening, so it's okay, so it's cool. So they're in the car together. They're in Redmond's car,
which has his ID in it with his real name,
so the other people could have seen that he lied to them. Whatever. They go to a diner. They're seeing all these people like watching the news, calling their loved ones, being like, I think it's over. I think we're turning a corner. Like, we're gonna be okay. Like, they're seeing an environment outside of the one they were just in, confirming that they made the right decision, basically. One was not involved in this decision. That's the other issue I have with this quote, is like, this 8-year-old did not decide to kill dad. But then the last thing is them in the car together. He starts the car. Boogie Shoes comes on. He turns it off. She turns it back on. They sit there for a second. It's kind of awkward. So she turns it off. And then he turns it back on. So it's both of them, like, I think the implication is them choosing positivity.
Yeah,
and, like,
but the ending, after all of this death, 4 people they don't know, their beloved husband and father, and then it's just like,
Boogie Shoes. Yeah. What are you gonna do?
That's all, folks.
Yeah.
Like, it's just very Looney Tunes-esque.
That's M. Night Shyamalan's cameo in this movie. Is he?
Well, he does have one. He's on the television at one point.
Yeah. He said that was one of the more difficult cameos to put in, but he pitched it as kind of a joke, and then everyone was like, no, that's really funny. We should put you in that way.
Yeah, because that's what you want to hear about your thriller. That's a really funny idea, M. Night. Let's do that.
Yeah. I mean, I liked it.
Yeah.
That was the only other way that he was going to be in there.
All right. Now, our rating of this
What did
film.
we think about this movie?
Obviously, we loved it. Okay.
Yeah.
So our rating is a out of 4 rating system with 5 options.
Yep.
0 out of 4 is, oh no.
It should not be made.
Bad.
Yeah.
1 is, that was a movie.
We watched it.
Yep. 2 is...
We changed this for this episode.
Yes, we did. It used to be just like...
That was fine. We watched that movie.
That was good.
And we changed it to, it's a well-made movie.
It's a well-made movie.
Yeah.
3 is enjoyable and kind of technically good. And 4 is Oscar worthy, like, oh man, that was a really great movie in all aspects.
Yeah.
Which, so far, I think we've only watched 1 this year. 2? 2. So my rating for this movie...
2.
2.
Yeah. Mine is also 2, which is why we changed the thing.
Yeah, because it is a really well-made film.
It's got a lot of cool elements.
But it wasn't, like, an enjoyable...
Yeah, something was missing the entire time.
Yeah.
And I don't fully know what that was, besides I would just love one single answer about anything that happened in it.
Yeah, like, better writing, finishing...
I will say that this movie made me want to read the book and watch Signs again. We watched it. You put your rating on Letterboxd, and then immediately your mom texted and was like, "The book was better." Yeah,
like it was almost immediate.
Yeah,
like I think it was a coincidence. I think she was putting a different movie on her Letterboxd, but it really was just like, yeah, I saw you watched it. The book was so much better.
Yeah.
So like, if you want a good story, because this does have a good premise,
look at Paul's book.
Read the book.
Yeah. We talk about another movie that we have watched in 2023.
Yeah, a non-2023 released movie.
A palate cleanser.
Because we watch movies. That is a thing that we do.
Yeah.
And we want to like briefly discuss some other movies that we've watched this year. And the movie for this episode is Labyrinth, which is just a great movie.
Yep.
It's so good. It's a Jim Henson movie, so there's obviously puppets. I believe it's his directorial debut. I could be wrong. I know he for sure directed it.
Yes. I'm pretty sure it is.
David Bowie is in it. That's, a big thing. He plays the Goblin King. If you love David Bowie, if you love David Bowie's crotch, this is the movie for you. If you love the 80s, if you love puppets, if you love movies with puppets with great jokes that hold up from the 80s, this is the movie for you.
If you want lore that also isn't fully explained, but in a much more satisfying way, then Labyrinth.
It's a great movie.
If you want a movie that will not edge you.
Yeah. Edge you in a way that doesn't finish. Because it edges you a little bit. Because at the beginning, in this movie, and this isn't really spoiling much, because like the premise of the movie is she gets trapped in the labyrinth world.
She calls the Goblin King.
She calls the Goblin King and gets trapped.
He steals her baby brother.
Yeah.
She has to get her baby brother back through the labyrinth.
So there's a scene at the beginning where she is saying something that supposedly is what you have to say to call the Goblin King.
Yeah.
And so she's saying it, and she says a line of it, and then we get a shot of some of the goblin puppets, and they're like, yeah? And she says a little bit more, and then we get a shot of the puppets, and they're like, go on!
Yeah.
And then she says something, and it's not right.
She messes up the line.
She messes up the line, and all the goblins go, forget about it. Like, it's great. It's a great thing. Bryce, have you seen Labyrinth?
I have not yet.
I think you would really like it.
It's a movie that I think you would love.
Yeah.
I have you remind me of the man stuck in my head.
Remind me of
the
the babe.
The Babe.
Oh, oh gosh. You remind me of the babe.
Yeah. That is, it's a movie with a great soundtrack. Yeah. It's great characters.
I feel like Labyrinth has one of those movie facts in the way that like Lord of the Rings does, of like when Viggo Mortensen breaks his toe, and every time you watch it you go, hey, did you know that he broke like Labyrinth has one of those scenes, for me at least, of when it's like the MC Escher kind of thing, and he flips around like he was actually walking upside down. They couldn't get the special effects right, so you can kind of see the support of them propping him up. Every time I'm like, hey, did you know that's not special effects?
But it is a great movie, and it really holds up. So that is our movie discussion for today.
Yep.
Please follow us places. We have an Instagram.
That's
it.
Follow us on Instagram, Virtual Cocktail.
Yeah.
You can follow us on YouTube. We have 2 channels. This, obviously, if you're watching it on YouTube, you know where it is.
Yeah.
This goes up on VC Recordings.
Yes.
But our other channel is Virtual Cocktail.
Virtual Cocktail has all of our scripted
content, so our short films and all of that jazz. And VC Recordings is our unscripted content, where eventually we'll have more too. Like Bryce, he's gonna be running our RPG campaigns, and
once we get it written,
that's fine. There's no
we got time.
Rush.
Also, if I may interject just for a second.
Yeah, of course. Bryce.
I have to disagree about the questions about the bodily functions of whenever they were getting shot and slicing their throat. My dad actually has a friend who
shot himself in the arm.
No. He actually they did powerlifting together.
Yeah.
And he went off to be a mountain man. He does like his own
that's
homestead stuff up there.
Sure.
And he told my dad about a story of whenever he went down to the town, went to the bar, because what else are you gonna do in the mountain?
Sure.
And a guy and a girl were having a squabble over another guy. The guy leaves. She's asked to leave because if he comes back, he's gonna bring trouble. Lo and behold, he comes back and brings trouble in the form of a I don't know what kind of gun he brought, but my dad's friend, he's a big dude.
Yeah.
He ended up getting up and trying to wrestle the gun away from the guy. And it wasn't until the police came that they're like, hey, dude, you're bleeding. And he was like, what? He looked down. He was shot right here.
Wow.
He was on this side. Right above.
On his chest.
On his chest.
For audio viewers, in the chest.
He was shot in his chest, in his upper pec area. And he said, he said it felt like someone took 2 fingers and just shoved him really hard. And on the throat splitting stuff, there's a lot of accounts of people in duress slicing their own throats. And I haven't seen the Cabin movie, but I assumed they were in duress.
I mean, he's definitely got some adrenaline going through his system.
He does it very casually. He's in a rocking chair, and he just goes,
okay, okay, never mind that.
The bullet thing, I think...
The bullet thing, I can give you a little bit more. I will say, the situation you described is more adrenaline rising.
Yeah.
Dave Bautista was standing quietly in a bathtub.
Dave Bautista was confronting his own death when he slices through it.
I mean, again, depends
but you're right.
Depends on how big the boy is.
You're right. He's a big boy.
He is a big beefy boy. Yeah.
So
also, welders will make anything dope for free. Knowing many welders, one being me.
Yeah.
If you tell them, hey, can you make this ridiculous thing? They're like, yeah.
So if we have visions, if we have terrible visions, I
Absolutely.
need you to make a
Absolutely.
Bryce is the guy to call.
got you.
Yeah.
So for our viewers at home, Bryce is the
My
guy to
P.O. boxes.
When you were plagued by visions.
So follow us on YouTube, follow
Yeah.
us on our Instagram.
If you want to be plagued by visions of our content.
Our Instagram and our social media stuff is just Virtual Cocktail. We're not
Yeah.
going to make separate things for that.
That feels
Yeah.
excessive.
We do technically have a subreddit. There's nothing happening on there right now. I just claimed the name. But, maybe eventually we will if,
We technically have a Twitter too, or an X account, whatever
Yeah.
it's called now. Instagram is our active place.
Yes,
So-
that's where we do most of our things.
Yeah.
And we also want to say, check out our short film teaser trailer is now out for Hello, My Name is Friendman.
On Instagram and YouTube, you can watch the teaser trailer for our short film that we've talked about a little bit, that we can talk about more at a different time.
Yep.
We also have character blurbs about everyone who's in the movie, or almost everyone who's in the movie. All of that is to just kind of keep some momentum going while getting people interested in it while we're going through the festival circuit, because it will be a while until we can release it publicly, unfortunately. So if you
but-
want to learn more,
Another place to hear about that film probably won't be on this podcast. We might start another podcast, which we want your input on.
this one is obviously weekly, or has been so far. We are considering doing a monthly kind of update podcast for on VC recordings to talk about everything that we've done.
Yeah. Like VC stuff, like regular, like our scripted stuff, our unscripted stuff, stuff that we're just doing in our own personal lives.
Yeah.
Like we mentioned in the last episode, we filmed this at the Commonwealth Sanctuary, and we do stuff here all the time. So maybe we want to talk about that stuff.
Yeah.
Like a really cool show just got announced coming up in September of the folk musicians.
Yeah.
Which is gonna be super fun. So maybe we'll talk about that kind of stuff there.
Yeah.
We might also just hang out and talk. Bryce will be on that one too. You don't know that, Bryce, but you're gonna be on that one.
Oh, boy.
Congratulations.
Because you're doing stuff for us as well. So.
I'm learning all sorts of new things today.
Basically, if there is a preferred format, what would you like to see?
Yeah.
We are also considering, we have half set up a Patreon. We're considering putting that up behind the Patreon of if you support us, then here are the updates. Here's literally what you're paying for. This is what we're working on, that kind of thing. If that's something you're interested in, cool, let us know.
Yes. And Patreon will have other paywall stuff as well, especially when the RPG stuff happens. We're gonna have stuff that's just for that, and then other kind of things. So
far, the idea for it though is to not have tiers. It's just gonna be a flat monthly rate.
Yes.
So if you subscribe for a low undetermined amount, then you get all of it.
Everything.
All of it.
Yeah, so let us know. If you have questions about anything, you can leave them in the comments.
Related to this,
And then we can talk about it on that podcast.
Yeah.
And then specific for this podcast, let us know if there's stuff that you like us talking about, you don't like us talking about. If there's a movie that you want us to watch soon and talk about soon, let us know. Obviously, it has to be released in 2023.
I think we've talked about doing technical releases of it premiered at a film in 2023.
If there's a festival release 2023 but didn't go to theaters until a different year, we can do that. We're gonna find some loopholes.
Yeah.
Even without the loopholes, this podcast can go on for so long.
There's so much everywhere.
So much. I mean, just yesterday, I was I didn't even hear about these 10 movies. How and we're even looking.
Yeah.
So it's just there's so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what we're up to. That's I think the end of this podcast. So thank you for listening. I know it was a long one. If you don't like them being long, let us know. If you do like them being this length, also let us know. We're trying to figure this out. We're making this with us in mind, but also you in mind.
Yeah.
It's not just for us to talk about movies. We can do that without making a podcast.
But the podcast helps.
Yeah. So thank you for watching. Subscribe.
All that good stuff.
And we will see you in our next episode of the Year of the Movie podcast.
Yep. Bye.